Women are oppressed, men are quite oppressed, but what oppresses us is not, like the patriarchy or whatever. What oppresses us is sin and vice. That's what actually does it. True freedom is not, as the feminists and the liberals who preceded them would believe, the ability to do whatever we wish. The right to do wrong. I don't think there's any right to do wrong. I think that's why the word is called a right. I think that liberty is the right to do what we ought to do. And so I think that the truth will set you free, and I think that falsehood will enslave you. And I think that the real oppression we see today is a result of following our appetites, our lower will, disconnected from our rational will. So, I go out and eat a lot of donuts, or I shoot up a bunch of heroin or something, and I am addicted to porn, or I'm sleeping around with all these women, or forget about porn, I'm just indulging my pride on social media, and I'm just doom scrolling all day and not doing any of my work. Those are oppressions because you can't escape them. Even when your rational will says, I've had enough drugs, I've eaten enough donuts, I've looked at enough porn, your appetite comes back in and says, give me more, right? And so you lose your freedom. To quote St. Paul, the things that I want to do, I don't do, and the things that I don't want to do, I do.
So we are oppressed by patriarchy, because didn't you define patriarchy as like male sexual appetite and things like hookup culture?
No, I think patriarchy truly is just, the reflection and the symbol of marriage of the relation between Christ and his church.
Oh, because previously you defined it as things like hookup culture and...
No, I said that we live in a patriarchy in as much as women are not dominant over men, right? And so I agree that women are still bearing the brunt of a lot of terrible things, but it's a perverted patriarchy, were my exact words. And so the true one would be the notion that man is the head of woman as Christ is the head of his church, which makes a lot of liberals shriek these days. But the way that this perverse patriarchy would be practiced today is that man is not like Christ to his church. Man is like a little demon in the Garden of Eden tempting Eve.
So you define current oppression as basically modernity, like things like you said, social media, pride, gluttony, lust.
No, I think real oppression really can only come from sin. I think and the wages of that are death. And so, the law can come in and act in a way that is contrary to justice, and that does happen a lot. But that doesn't really matter. You can be free in a prison cell. The problem for us, the far greater threat to our liberty, is the lack of ability to control ourselves and to live virtuous, flourishing lives. And you can't just blame some guy on TikTok for that. You can't just blame a law for that.
So did you want to respond?
Yeah, I guess I had a question. I do want to ask if you think religion is really good at suppressing that like proclivity for vice. And you would probably label
Not all
something.
religions, but
you would probably label something like pornography consumption as unequivocally a vice and something that oppresses us. Then why is it that in states that have the most evangelical Christians, we see the highest subscriptions to things like Playboy, OnlyFans, Pornhub?
They still have
hookers.
Playboy. Playboy's wholesome.
I'm just painting more of a historical progression. It went from like obviously Penthouse to Playboy to Hustler to now, then to the strip clubs, pornography, restaurants, things like that. Why is that most rampant in red states, specifically religious red states?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak specifically to evangelical Protestantism because I'm not totally, I'm not one, and I'm just not as familiar with it. I do know that in some of the Protestant denominations, they get a little bit more loosey-goosey on the sex stuff. Obviously, the Lambeth statement permitted contraception and a little bit weirder sex stuff for some Protestants. So I remain a mackerel-snapping papist, and I kind of believe the old-fashioned way that, to quote the great philosopher Norm Macdonald, sex is a filthy, shameful thing that should only be for the purpose of procreation within marriage. So I don't know, if you say, well, in Utah or something, they're looking at porn more, and therefore the Mormons are, hypocrites. Okay, maybe they're hypocrites. First of all, Utah just effectively banned porn because they forced porn companies to have an age, and Pornhub very tellingly said, okay, we're not going to do business there anymore.
I guess my point is it doesn't seem like religion is a compelling antidote against the vices that you deem to be oppressive. If in these states that have the highest populations of religious people, your type of religion, Christian, why is it that they're indulging in these vices more disproportionately than liberals?
Well, again, I love my Protestant friends, but some of them take a looser view of sexual morality than the Catholics do. The Catholics still have a very rigid view. So I think you're making a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison. Yeah, but furthermore, to quote La Rochefoucauld again, hypocrisy is the tribute vice pays to virtue, and religion is a public thing. So we want to pray. We can pray individually. We can avoid looking at porn individually. We can do whatever individually. But we're social creatures. And so if we live in a community that is more likely to put us in the near occasion of sin, we're more likely to fall into that. You know, today, porn is everywhere, right? You can't drive down the street. You certainly can't open social media without that. And if there's more temptation everywhere, you're more likely to fall into it, even if you know it's wrong. And so now we point to those people, we say, well, they're hypocrites. No, they're not hypocrites. They're human beings who
they're
have
victims.
a standard and fall.
You think they're
fall short of
victims
it.
to like just the rampant porn industry?
Yeah, I think the porn industry certainly victimizes people.
Do you think porn worsened it more than prior? Like, do you kind of blame the porn industry?
Yeah, I think porn industry is awful and should be wiped off the face of the earth.
Can we talk about what consequences you're seeing since the proliferation of porn that makes society so much worse? Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah, well, you see, I mean, you know, again, to go back to all those studies, you see a big spike in sexual aggression. You see a big spike in...
Wait.
No,
crime
there's
is
been
down
a
since
decline
the
in rape
porn,
since
early
pornography
2000s?
spiked.
Crime is
Rape.
way down.
Yeah.
Well, okay, just, I mean...
And rape is way
domestic
down.
violence.
Yeah,
And abortion is way down.
Yeah.
Seems like it's
abortion, no. Abortion,
from the early 2000s, yeah.
Abortion is unfortunately slightly up even after the Dobbs decision, though if you go into the state-by-state data, babies still have been saved, and it's somewhat complicated.
But since porn became widely available, what's worse? Because it's not violence.
So what you're saying is, because there's porn now, people are getting married less, they're having fewer babies, they're getting pregnant
I'm
less,
not even
and maybe
saying
they're having
causation.
fewer
I'm
abortions.
just saying if porn just made society it's so catastrophic, what are the outcomes you're seeing? Because it's not violence.
Yeah,
I think you would say porn is bad as an end in itself, right?
Yeah, it's intrinsically evil, but also if you're interested in some studies or something, and again, I don't even really buy studies, but I think it was 2010 out of the University of Arkansas, a survey of the most popular porn, not all porn, but the most popular porn videos showed 88% depicted sexual aggression, verbal or physical. There was a study that came out about 10 years ago out of Denmark that showed that regular porn use increased misogynistic attitudes, which I totally agree. There was another study that came out of, I think it was Indiana, a few years ago, which showed that regular porn consumption was correlated with sexual aggressiveness in both men and women, which I don't think is a very good thing. And then there was another study, I forget which state it came out of, in like 2015 or 2019, which showed that porn use and sexual interactions online for women were a reliable predictor of in real life sexual violence committed against them. So again, I grant you that
there's a bunch of
you've got your
studies in the
studies, I've got my
opposite
studies.
direction, yeah.
But there, in as much as you do believe the social scientific data, there is a lot of evidence that porn has had disastrous consequences.
Pixie, you had something I think a little bit before this. Go ahead.
Yeah, basically, earlier when you were saying like, oh no, people aren't doing porn or watching pornographic content more often because they're surrounded by it, they can't help it. So even if it comes to a virtuous person, if they're surrounded, they're still going to fall prey to it. But to me, that doesn't necessarily track, and I don't want to be offensive here, but the Catholic Church, especially priests who are supposed to be surrounded by those who are holy, tend to have like some of the highest rates of like child abuse.
No, they don't. I mean, there's obviously a child sex abuse crisis. It was 20 years ago, especially in the Catholic Church.
And even recently, if we looked at like the past like 10 years, like enough has been done.
Obviously, there's a lot of media attention on that, and it's a terrible problem. But if you compare rates of child sexual abuse within the Catholic Church to any other religious community, among Christians, it's flat. It's exactly the same as the Protestants. Among certain Orthodox Jews, it's actually significantly lower. And then my favorite statistic here, though it's very dark, is that the rates of sexual abuse from the Catholic Church against children is about half the rate as public school teachers against children. So, it's all bad, but it's not particularly.
From what I've seen, it hasn't. At least from what I've seen, that's not necessarily true. What I've seen is that...
It's true. I can promise you.
Okay, we'll fact check later. Or right now, actually, we could. But one of the specific reasons, and I'll grant you this, or grant this to the Catholic Church at least, is that the reason why the Catholic Church has higher rates of sexual abuse compared to Protestants is not because Protestants are necessarily doing it less, but it's because the Catholic Church investigates it more. But even
they do investigate it a lot. I think it depends on which Protestant group you're comparing it to.